Well, hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar, Team Coaching with Professor David Clutterbuck and Lis Merrick. It's fantastic to have you all with us today and really appreciate you taking time out to listen to some really interesting thoughts about team coaching and what they might mean for you. We've had a fantastic response to this guest webinar today and people from attending all across Europe to listen to David Clutterbuck and Lis Merrick. So because of that, at the moment you're on mute. But we do hope it's going to be a very interactive hour, and we've got some polls for you so you can get involved in some responses there. And also we're going to have a lovely question and answer response at the end of the session as well. So if you've got some burning questions, some burning issues, please do save those up and pop them into your question or your chat box, and David and Lis will respond to those. So I'm hosting today's webinar. I think I know most of you attending, which is lovely. So I'm Janet Leonard and I'm part of the Learning and Development team at TMS. And as you know, I've been with the company a long time and run the accreditation webinars and facilitate team events and get involved in some coaching myself. And we're so thrilled that we are having the open guest webinar today hosted by David Clutterbuck and Lis Merrick. So I'll hand over to my peers now. Thank you, David. Thank you, Lis.
Thank you.
Janet. And David, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Okay, if anyone can hear me, I'm David Clutterbuck and I am a scribbler, that's what I call it. I've written over 60 books and many of them on coaching and mentoring and talent development and business excellence. I'm visiting professor at 3 universities and a founder of the MCC, the European Mentoring Coaching Council. I have a challenge. I do a new challenge every year. As you can see, one of them was to become a stand-up comic, but they've included skydiving, ski parasailing, doing the bobsleigh, and the stand-up comic is just one of the many things that have frightened the hell out of me. Back to you, Lis.
Yes, thank you, David. Sorry, I was smiling at the wondering how to put that list. I'm Lis Merrick. My background's in human resources, and I went into a consultancy career specialising in mentoring and coaching about 15 years ago. I'm a visiting fellow at Sheffield Business School, where I teach on the Masters in Coaching and Mentoring, and I spend my life working as a coach and developing and designing coaching and mentoring programs. And I'm very, very thrilled that David and I are going to be able to talk to you about team coaching today, because there is so much that is being taught and written about team coaching currently. I'm afraid my list of outside pursuits is not as exciting as David, but I do like a bit of skiing. So what we'd like to cover with you today, first of all, is just to find out a little bit more about you. So I'm going to hand over to Janet here.
Okay, thank you, Lis. So we've just launched our first poll of the webinar, and as Lis said, this is all about your expectations. And absolutely, I can see you're all tapping away there to the responses. So are you currently an in-house team coach? Are you currently an external team coach? You're interested in becoming a team coach? Or perhaps you're an independent coach interested in becoming a team coach. So lovely. We've got most of the responses in now. Just give you a couple more seconds to share your thoughts there. And then I'll share those with everybody and we can see what the responses are, who we've got today. So let's share those with you all.
Well, I think there's some really interesting results there, Janet and David. So there is a very small percentage of in-house team coaches with us, and very reasonable percentage of people who are external team coaches. That's great. So we've got some people already doing team coaching with us. And we've got a slightly larger number of people who are interested in becoming a team coach. And a smaller percentage here, 17% of people interested in becoming a team coach within their organisation. So I think what we're going to cover today is going to be interesting for everyone. And Thanks, Janet. If you can just put me back onto our session today. Shall I just do that? Here we are. So what we're going to cover with you is what is team coaching and how it differs from other team development interventions, because there is a lot of discussion and a lot of people saying, oh, I'm team coaching, but actually what they are doing is more team building or team facilitation. We'll have a look at what team coaches do, and then we'll finish off with looking at what skills or knowledge a team coach needs. So I'll hand over to David now.
Okay.
And Janet, are you going to...
Absolutely. Yes, let's have some more feedback from you. So we're going to have another poll now, which is all about the team coach. Sorry, the team. Okay, so if you'd like to tap into your question box, your chat box, what is team coaching? How does it differ from other team development interventions? And as Liz said, we have differing perceptions of team coaching. So if you'd just like to pop into your chat boxes, we've got some comments coming through already. How would you define team coaching? What is team coaching in your opinion? And we can see from the earlier poll, we've got some fantastic experience in today's webinar. Some really interesting thoughts there. So what is team coaching? How does it differ from other team development interventions? Okay, thank you. We've got some lovely responses coming in here, which I'm sure David and Liz can come up. We've got, thank you, Elizabeth. We've got supporting team to perform. We've got Sheila, bringing out the team experiences and knowledge to enable them to share and build on that. Jessica, thank you. Team coaching is about understanding how to optimize on team members' strengths and personalities. Linda, thank you. Coaching the team individually and together to collectively achieve results. Jane, thank you. Collaboratively designed over time. Rhonda, support in change processes. Alan, nice definition here. Guiding the team through questioning to raise awareness and allowing them room to help one another to help the team. Lots and lots of responses there, which I'm sure David and Liz might want to chip into and explore how they would like to define team coaching.
I think the first thing to say is all of these things with one query that I would put it. One person said in coaching the team individually and collectively. I think we would, in most of the definitions that we would use, we would see that coaching the team collectively is the core, and that coaching the team individually is generally tends to be out with of the general team coaching process. Now, that's a matter of splitting fine hairs, but most team coaching courses, most team coaching books would tend to emphasize that this is the collective learning that takes place, and any individual coaching that happens on the side is helpful, but it's not formally part of the team coaching process. However, you might include what we often talk about is creating the environment for coaching within the team, and in those circumstances, individuals within the team would actually coach each other. And so this is not coaching that's being done from outside the team, it's being done within the team. So there are a number of different ways you can cut it, but essentially pretty much everything that is said is yes, that, yes, and that. Okay? Hello? Shall I move on to the next?
Yeah, that would be great, David, if you'd like to carry on.
Right. Here's a definition from Peter Hawkins. I mean, it's a lovely definition, but it goes on a bit. But it covers an awful lot of the things here. It's about, you see the key things here, the complementary skills, the common purpose, the set of performance goals, all of these things, and the shared approach, the mutual accountability, and a large part of this comes from the work by Richard Hackman, who died a couple of years ago. And so I think all of the things here, again, describe broadly what team coaching does, or what happens within the team itself. And the team coaching is what applies to a group that is defined this way. Unfortunately, most of the teams that we encounter are not actually teams. They are a group of people who lack many of these, or sometimes all of these characteristics. And certainly when we look at top teams, it's difficult. When we look at boards of companies, it's almost impossible for a board to be a team, simply because of the nature of the role and the fact that they are expected to exercise independence. Can we move the slides on? And I don't think I have the thing to do that. There we go. So here's a short definition, or two shorter definitions. As you can see, helping the team improve performance and the processes by which performance is achieved through reflection and dialogue. And the comments before about questions and so forth will be part of all of this. That reflection and dialogue incorporate a lot of questions and asking the team the right questions. In fact, one of the things that we often do with teams is get them to think about what is the critical question for this team, that question that they can use as the benchmark for whatever they do. I remember working with Clark's many years ago, and them telling me about their corporate question, which was, but does it sell shoes? And I think we found this critical question, or one or two critical questions that teams can ask themselves on a regular basis just to check out what they're doing. Are we actually focusing on what's really important? And you can see the definition by Hawkins and Smith there. They're talking about clarifying the mission, and improving external and internal relationships. And this, again, a significant part of the whole process. If we move to the next slide, we can see that systemic team coaching, as again defined by Peter Hawkins, it looks at the systems that happen. Now, in our work, we've been looking also at individual coaching. We're looking at how the inner dialogue that people have with themselves, and the outer, and also understanding their internal context, and the dialogue they have to understand their external context. It's mixing those two that enables people to make progress. So that what a coach does is help people make the link between what's happened, their understanding of their internal world and their understanding of their external world. And that is essentially what's happening with systemic team coaching. We're helping people to understand the systems within the team, and therefore the systems within each person individually, within as a member of the team, and the systems that are happening externally around them, and the interaction between those two. And this becomes, not surprisingly, highly complex. And of course, we can see some significant differences if we move on to in the way that we coach individuals and the way that we coach teams. So when we're coaching an individual, for example, it's very easy. The confidentiality, at least on the confidentiality front, because what gets said stays in the room unless there's a very strong reason for that not to be the case. But within team coaching, you have to be very careful, because you can't, things that somebody might say one-to-one, they probably may not say within the context of the team as a whole. And so the team coach has to work within bounds of confidentiality, where it's and that's where it makes it so difficult if the team coach is also an individual coach, because they end up with a lot of baggage from everybody in the team's told them things which can't be told to somebody else or everybody else in the team. It's very difficult to manage that on an individual basis. So there's this issue of how much can you actually say what's going on in people's individual minds. The relationship scope too, that just what we can talk about. What we find is that in effective team coaching, you don't address issues that are only relevant to one or two people, which is normally what happens in so many team meetings. But you're addressing issues that are of relevance to everybody in the team. Now, that scope can be quite wide. One team I was working with, a bunch of managers all responsible for different departments, didn't really get to have any interdependence. They had been learning to grow as a team, and when one of them had a problem with a sociopath in their team, everybody decided it was everybody's business, because the same thing could happen to them at some stage, and they needed to develop some policies and processes for dealing with that kind of situation. And so there is quite a lot of breadth on relationship scope. However, something that just relates to one or two people in the team should not be the subject of team coaching. And then there's the issue of, how fast do people reach decisions? People, roughly speaking, extroverts and introverts tend to get to reach decisions faster, or the extroverts faster than the introverts, although it's not entirely an extrovert-introvert split. But what we find is that it's very common for in a team coaching session for somebody, for one part of the team, to have come to a decision in their own minds. This is what we need to do, and the other half of the team is sitting there thinking, I'm not really sure about that. And so there are team coaching techniques that we have to use to deal with this situation. And one of them is to send off those who think they've got the right decision into another room to think of all the reasons how it could go wrong, and what you do about it if it did go wrong, and leave the people who are still trying to get there much more time and space without the pressure of the others around them to come to their own conclusions. And then you bring them back together again, and they're pretty much aligned in most cases. Now, that's just an example of a simple technique, but how people make decisions and the quality of decisions is something that is different from when you're dealing one-to-one and when you're dealing with the team as a whole. So I'm going to pass back to Liz.
Thank you, David. I think that last technique you were just talking about is an excellent one, and starts moving us into the topic of what does a team coach do. And Janet, I think we've got another poll to come in.
We have indeed, yes. Yeah, we're going to hand back over to our audience again now and bring you all in again. As you've seen, we've got some great experience in the webinar today. So we're going to be asking your thoughts on four, what seem like simple questions about team coaching. Simply vote yes or no, and then David and Liz will respond to the results. So I'll share launch the first poll, which is: a team coach works with individual team members. Yes or no? So just vote there. That's great. We're getting some results in. Fantastic. Some interesting splits here. Thank you. So a team coach works with individual team members. Okay, most of you voted there. Just give you a couple more seconds, and then I'll close the poll and share the results with you. Fantastic. I think we're all there now. So let's close that and share it. So Liz and David, you're to respond to that question. Team coach works with individual team members.
Well, I'm just smiling at this, David, because I think you said a few minutes ago that it's not a good idea if a team coach works with individual team members as well, because it's very difficult to keep the competencies and knowledge of what you know from the individual team coaching and keeping that out of the overall team coaching. So that may have just skewed this slightly. But what do you think of it, David? Because I have views which I think might be slightly different to you.
I think part of the problem is that in particular, if you're coaching if you're trying to coach the team leader and the team as a whole, you get a lot of mistrust of the coach, and therefore you actually reduce the openness with which people are prepared to say things to the team, to the coach, because on the basis they're also coaching their boss, and they just do not want any, even though they're told there's no contamination and they maybe believe it intellectually, emotionally they don't quite trust it.
Lovely, thank you. And obviously,
I think that's a really good.
Lovely, thank you, Liz.
Sorry, Janet.
It's okay. Over to you, Liz.
No, I was just going to say I think that's a really good point, but I think there are a lot of situations where team coaches do end up working with individuals as well in the team, and it's often difficult for them to say that that's not, not possible. So to hear what you say, David, I was just thinking of the practicalities here. Shall we go on to the next one, Janet?
Should we just address that? Well, we can, because I think it's useful to address. What we're not saying is you never do it. What we're saying is it does create a lot of additional tensions and complications, and if it can be avoided, then that's a positive thing. What a lot of team coaches do is actually contract to do the team coaching, and then subsequently to do individual coaching with people once the team coaching assignment is finished.
Yes. Okay. No, that's great. So, have the next one.
Okay, so our next poll for you, a team coach must be the leader of the team, yes or no? And again, Liz and David will share their thoughts and observations on this one. So a team coach must be the leader of the team. What are your thoughts? Okay, all of you have voted there. I'll share the responses.
That's right. Okay. Well, that's pretty definite, isn't it?
Well, it is, but this was a little bit of a trick question we put in for you, because a team coach can be the leader. So, David, do you want to talk about that a bit more?
I'm not a football fan at all, but if we look at the next time, there are actually 4 kinds of team coach that we find defined both in the literature and in practice. And the first one of these is the team leader as coach. And the analogy that we use is in a football team, for example, and I'm not exactly a fan of football, but anyway, but in a football team, the team captain is on the field and is part of the play and is an integral part of that team. But they have a role to coach other people as well. Then you've got the team manager as coach, and that's so the team manager and the team leader are not necessarily the same thing. So the manager is probably not engaged with the actual work of the team, but he looks on and sort of moves the players around and takes people on and off the field. Then you've got the internal coaching specialist would be somebody who's trained within the organisation to be an internal coach and has more qualifications and so forth. And that's a bit like the over manager sitting in the stands. And then you've got the external coach who comes in from outside, who probably never even sees the game, but actually works with individuals or the team as a whole on specific issues that they want to address. And we see all of these kinds of definitions being applied to team coaching, and they all have a relevance. But as it says, you don't have to be the leader of the team. Quite clearly, most team coaching is done by externally resourced people. Or by trained, so they're external to the organisation or external to that team. Increasingly, however, we're seeing that team coaches take on a lot of the roles of team managers and team leaders take on a lot of the role of team coach. But that requires a very strong atmosphere of psychological safety, and it tends to come most often after a period of exposure to externally resourced team coaching, but by somebody not in the team, who creates the environment for the team to coach itself. And that indeed is the aim of team coaching, we would say, is to give the team the capability to self-coach.
Lovely, thank you, David. Thank you for that. So let's move on to our next poll, which is asking you for some input. A team coach helps to define a team's vision and purpose. A team coach helps to define a team's vision and purpose. What are your thoughts on this one? Okay, most of you nearly voted there. Fantastic. Great, I'll share the results there with you, some interesting thoughts. So Liz and David.
Well, this is an interesting one, because I think if the team's vision and purpose isn't already defined or clarified when the team coach gets involved with them, it's probably one of the first things they should be looking at. What do you think, David?
Absolutely. Very often what we find the team coach does is to question the team's vision and purpose, and to help the team really test it out. Is it valid? Is it valid in terms of the context that they're operating in? Does it actually apply to their strengths? Helping them at the very least to understand it. If they have one, do they understand it? And if they have one, is it actually the right one for what they need to achieve the objectives that they or start again? If they do have one, how does that relate to how they perform and the priorities they have in the team? One of the questions I love asking top and senior teams is, if this team didn't actually meet as a team, but everyone just did their own separate thing for a whole year, would that have a positive, negative, or neutral outcome on performance? And everybody husks and puffs and says, of course, be negative. And then you say, okay, what are the 5 things that this team actually has to do that really make a difference? And they all eventually get down to 5 things, or perhaps a few more. And then we say, okay, so how much of the team's energy and time is spent on those 5 or 6 things? And of course, there frequently is no correlation between those things at all. So it's a fairly simple example of how a team coach would help the team really understand its vision or its relationship to its vision and purpose, assuming that it doesn't have one yet.
Great, thank you, David. And over to our final poll. And this one is looking at a team coach identifies barriers and challenges to team performance. A team coach identifies barriers and challenges to team performance. What are your thoughts on this one? Great, so most of you voted there. Fantastic. I'll share the results and over to Liz and David again.
Okay. I think that again we played with the language a little bit because I would say that the team coach helps the team to identify the barriers and challenges to performance. It's quite rare for the team coach to go out and gather data on behalf of the team, but what they do is help the team go out and gather the data it needs for itself. Liz, do you want to add to that?
I think David is Janet here. I think certainly some of the audience are totally agreeing with you in terms of the language there. That we've got Wynne just emailed in a couple of responses there. The coach enables the team to identify barriers.
Yes. So we played a few games here, but I think the key thing is we wanted just to get to stimulate the thinking, basically.
Lovely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Should we just move on to the next slide, if you may?
Indeed.
Okay, this is one we've just done. So there we go. So these are just some of the critical things that we found. So defining team purpose, they would help the team define its team purpose and priorities, help it understand its environment, help it identify and tackle barriers to performance, build the team learning plan. Now that's an important part that we see, of team coaching that we see, and that is having a collective plan that looks at what does this team as a whole need to be good at over the next 12 months or so. What are the skills and capabilities it has now, and how do those compare to how good, where it needs to be good, and therefore what do we do about that in terms of either bringing new skills in or developing the skills of the individuals that we've got, and so forth. This growing of confidence is a really important issue. We know that teams that have that set and achieve stretch goals are teams that actually start with a high degree of confidence and a track record of achievement already. Setting stretch goals for people who don't have those characteristics, it just doesn't work. And this last one is about making coaching happen within the team thereafter, making the team more self-sufficient. Giving them the system skills and behaviors to internalize coaching, so making coaching within the team part of the way that we do business. And a large part of that comes out of the way that we work on team meetings. If you look at the next slide, because essentially we're trying to make the team meetings, which are sort of like the core of how people work together. So trying to make those team meetings more effective, more, as you can see, performance focused, which is really helpful. One of the things the simple things we do is to get people to look at the agendas for team meetings. We find typically that they start off with apologies for absence, any other matters arising, all sorts of nifty stuff. And this is not very helpful because the way that the human brain, what neuroscience is telling us, is that we have about 45 minutes of good concentration, and then we start to deteriorate. And so we're putting what we really need to do is to put the most important things up front, the most important and most urgent things up front, with the emphasis on importance. And and deal with those, and consign all that other stuff to emails or pre-meeting or stuff that you do before the meeting. But focusing on the critical things where you're putting your mental energy, where it's going to have the biggest impact, is really, I think, very important. And looking at the quality of discussion and dialogue is one of the tools that we have, which is very, very simple. But we introduce a coaching style into the discussion of difficult topics. So what happens is that we get everybody to, the person chairing the meeting won't allow anyone to say anything for the first few minutes. And in that time, they write down their responses to the 3 questions: what do I want to say, what do I want to hear, and what do I want to achieve? Out of that comes a, well, then they all go around and read out what they've said. And then the discussion begins. And what we find is, firstly, the quality of decisions is so much better. The quality of discussion is so much better because people are more respectful of each other, and they call, they take into account other people's needs from this meeting. And it takes about half the time as it normally would. And it's just a simple example of the kind of way that team coaches can help teams actually look at the way that they behave, the way that they operate, and make them build in more of a coaching style into the way that they do their daily business. When we look at the team coaching process, these are key things. A team coach comes in and helps the team contract with each other and with the team coach. So what are we going to do here? Then they try and set an overarching goal. They very specifically do not focus down on something very, very specific, because then you end up doing facilitation and problem solving. Then they could find the specific issues and why they're important, that they want to work on. Then they look at the context. What's actually going on here? What do we know about the world around us and how it impacts this issue? Frequently, that leads to a redefinition of the issue they want to work on. And then as a result of that they can work collectively on and individually on getting a mind shift, seeing the thing differently and coming to different ways of dealing with it. That gives them different ways forward. And then you have decisions that get made, including sometimes deciding to hold things up until they have more information, so deciding not to decide. And then you recontract. So that would be a typical team coaching conversation. I think that's fairly straightforward. So some of the questions that a team coach might ask are that just make a team think. What did you do collectively this week that did or didn't meet your collective ideal? What did you do collectively this week that took you substantially towards achieving a key team goal? How self-honest are you, and individually and collectively as a team? I think that's a lovely question. What's the personality of the team? How is the leadership distributed? Because leadership in a really well-functioning team, it moves. People get assigned, people take leadership because of where they have the strengths to apply. And for the team coach, there's a bunch of questions as well that I think are quite helpful if we just move on to those. So what are the team's strengths and weaknesses? What's the balance between positive and negative conflict within the team? We know that that having some conflict around task and process can be highly positive and useful. Conflict around relationships is always destructive. How well does the team understand its strengths and weaknesses? I love this one. Does the team have a collective will to achieve? Is there strong strong alignment between the goals of the team and the goals of the coachee? If people are being coached separately, is there strong alignment between the values of the team and the values of the manager? That can cause all sorts of tensions. And what's the capacity of this team for open and honest conversation? So these are just some of the critical questions that a team coach would ask. There's many, many more. But basically, we want to go in there and help this team to understand itself. And by doing that, we automatically have to get a deeper understanding of the team for ourselves. Okay. Over to you, I think.
Thanks, David. So let's just think about what skills and knowledge a team coach actually needs. Well, in our experience, to be a team coach, you really need some prior experience of one-to-one coaching practice. And we estimate that about 150 hours of one-to-one coaching practice before you embark on team coaching is about right. David's looked at this and worked with some team coaches and found that to be about the right starting point. And it's very useful to have some idea of different team coaching approaches, things such as conflict resolution and really how to create creativity in the team, and really how to create that reflective space that the team needs in order to be able to work on some of the issues together with the support of the team coach. And of course an understanding of group dynamics and processes, how a team actually forms and develops, those sort of basic understanding of those types of dynamics is also very useful. So what we're going to have a look at now we were going to have some more polls, I think, Janet, at this point.
Yeah, we've got we've put the polls in the very end, Liz. Everybody will get at the very end. As soon as we shut down the webinar, we'll be getting some questions about your interest in ongoing sort of exclusive training for becoming a team coach. So yeah, absolutely. Everybody, don't forget to answer the survey at the very end, and that will give you some give Liz and David some really interesting feedback as to whether you are interested in continuing this interest in becoming a team coach. I think we've got lots of time for questions and answers now, if that's okay with you, Liz and David, and we've got some great questions coming in. Would that be okay with the two of you?
That's absolutely perfect. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, if I just pull up one from Alan. Alan has asked, is there a link to action learning sets? What are your thoughts on this one?
Okay, yeah, very much so. A lot of the behaviours and processes within an action learning set can be applied within the team coaching context as well. So you can actually help people to develop the coaching environment or a coaching culture inside the team by teaching them some of the simple techniques which are used also in action learning, where one person presents an issue and the others help them work on it. So that would be a very good. It also helps to build trust and openness within the team. So that would be. I think there's lots of commonalities between action learning and really good team coaching.
Lovely, that's fantastic. Thank you. And we've got another question here from Martin. Could you perhaps explain how this differs from intensive facilitation?
Okay. Basically, what a facilitator is trying to do is to resolve a particular problem, they're very much focused on that issue, and they help the team work through that problem. Whereas with what you're trying to do with the coach is focus on longer term development of capability, and the ability and to change things. And to be able to coach themselves effectively. So I think that there are a number of differences between in the role of coach and team coach and facilitator, but it relates around primarily around the kind of conversation that we're trying to have.
Can I just come in here, because I think actually people, some excellent team facilitators I've met are actually team coaching. It's just the label that is put on what they're actually doing. And I think with the real interest in team coaching that's come in over the last year or two, there's probably been people who have been team coaching for many years, and it's just been under the label of team facilitation.
Thank you, Liz. That's really clear there. Thank you. And another question that's just come in as well from Susan. How might profiles, such as the team management profile, fit within team coaching?
I think that's a great question. And Janet, you might want to answer this one as well. But I think tools such as team profile are absolutely excellent to help build the team's self-awareness as they're working through the coaching process. And certainly one of the things that David and I are very keen to do is to use profiles, your profiles, in our team coaching activities, because we think they're so complementary with what we're trying to achieve with team coaching. Janet,
Yes.
you might want to add to that, or David.
Yeah, just to say, there are a variety of diagnostics that can be used for different purposes, but this is one of the most powerful ways of helping the team to understand its own internal workings.
Lovely. Thank you for both of you there. And absolutely, obviously, we're a little bit biased here around the team management profile, but absolutely, I know a lot of you do use the team management profile for your team coaching, and it provides some fantastic feedback on both levels in terms of the types of work model, exploring with the team their purpose and what's working well and what isn't working well, and giving them some great insights. And then obviously on the behavioural level with the preferences, looking at the dynamic of the team and conflict and who can work best together, and development points for the team and how easy those development points are going to be accepted by the team. So yes, absolutely. I know a lot of people here today do use the team management profile, and one of our attendees today has put sharing the team management profiles is a fantastic start to team coaching sessions, beginning to encourage openness and understanding of difference. Thank you, Wynne, for that. There's some lovely insights there. Fantastic. And some more questions, if I can read some of these out for both of you. What is the duration of a team coaching? Is this just a one separate session, or is it recommended to have more sessions? From Camilla there. Thank you.
Oh, don't think you can, if you're just going to give one session, I think you are more likely to be dragged into or drawn into a facilitation role. Typically, you would want 3 or 4 plus sessions to help the team really get to grips with the process, managing the process for itself.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And another interesting question here from Tamarin. How would you sell the idea of team coaching to an organisation?
I would start with the fact that every organisation desperately needs teams, and it needs those teams to perform. And in many cases, the starting point is either a team that isn't functioning well. That's very difficult because it usually isn't a team, but that it can be very challenging. But if you've got enough commitment to make it work, that's the starting point. Or you're starting a project team from scratch, and the research shows that you can speed up the time from forming, storming, norming to performing quite a lot if that team is helped with a team coach coming in to work them through each of those stages. So that's where I would introduce the whole idea, most ideally to an organisation, is one of those 2 situations.
Lovely. Thank you, David. And a really interesting question here from Michael. Do you think you need a different approach if working with a team defined as not performing well compared with a team who are seen as functioning well?
I think you have to be very careful that that team doesn't feel they're remedial. I'll just make that point before David comes in.
Yes, exactly. I think the problem is that if a team is seen not to be performing well, they're going to come in with a lot lower self-belief than the other team. And so as a coach, you're going to have to spend a lot more time helping them to build self-confidence and to actually access their strengths. And so you would take much more of a strengths-based approach in that circumstance than you might perhaps in the other.
Lovely. Thank you, David, for those insights. That's fantastic. And an interesting, very practical question here from Angela. If perhaps you could share something a little bit more on the detail side of things. What are team coaches actually doing?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What are team coaches actually doing? So if you walked into a room, I guess, and actually saw a team coach in operation, what are they doing? Is it, the questioning, what's happening there?
I think if we talk about what we're doing effectively with one-to-one coaching, we're helping people, the most effective coaches help people have the conversations they need to have with themselves. So if that same principle at an individual level applies to the team, we're helping the team to have the conversation it needs to have with itself. So what you'll see the coach doing is helping, is stimulating and encouraging the environment and they're providing the questions that help the team to really have that conversation with itself. I mean, whereas in one-to-one coaching, you might actually generate a lot of the questions to a client. Within team coaching, you would actually be encouraging the team to generate their questions.
Okay, so if you walked into that room, you'd see them actually encouraging the team to generate those questions. Lovely. I'm sure that's helped, Angela. Thank you. And we've had a nice question here from Sheila. Is there any advice for coaching remote teams?
Very difficult.
Yes, I was going to say, I think it's very difficult to be able to do this virtually.
I mean, it's possible, but it is pretty tough for all the technological reasons, and the fact that even if you can see the other people in a team, you can't actually you lose a lot of those subtle clues about what's going on in their minds, and the only thing that we have found that can help is you can get a more open conversation sometimes if you do it by email. But you know, I think by and large, team coaching is something that has to be done face to face.
That's the ideal. Lovely. Thank you. Thanks. And a question here from Nikki as well. What about the team that's in denial and believes it is performing well, yet you as a coach are seeing something radically different?
Lovely question. We're not there as coaches to make judgments about the teams, and we can only encourage them to go out and get real data from clients and other stakeholders. If they're resistant to that, then I phrase the team coach really has to walk away, because we cannot change. We don't have the authority, we don't have the tools, we don't have the responsibility to get to tell them that they're wrong. What we can do is to offer them the suggestion they might like to validate some of their thoughts and assumptions. But if they don't want to do that, then that's a choice that they make.
Yeah, and I think, David, this is a situation that's very similar when you're involved in one-to-one coaching and you have a coachee who's in denial. Again, it's not you as the coach, you're not there to judge the other person, and you're not working with your own agenda, but it's how you're creating that reflective space for the individual, whether it's backed up with feedback or data or whatever, to really focus on the reality of the situation.
Lovely. Thank you, both of you. Thank you. And another question just coming in here from Jane. Would it be ideal to start with the top team in the organisation? And if so, have you had some experiences of that, some examples that you're happy to share?
I think the problem, if you can start with the top team, it's fine. But the problem in most organisations is the top team is a group, not a team. And therefore, you may have some real difficulties in getting them together. There may be, you may have also, you're much more likely to see destructive conflict in the top team, and so forth. So ideally, we would start just below the top team. So we would take one or two of the teams that are reporting into to their leader to the top team, and demonstrate what can be done there. Then you can slowly draw the top team in, but it's one of those things that part of one of the issues that the research shows us is that the more senior you become, the more you delude yourself about your ability to actually to change your behaviour, because the system actually below you and around you actually makes it hard, basically makes that behaviour much more ingrained and much more difficult to break.
Lovely. Thank you, David, for those insights. And interesting question here from Chris. What's the most common mistake that team coaches make? What are your thoughts on that one? Most common mistakes that team coaches might make?
I think just going in there and not really listening to what's going on with this team. But that would be one of the things. So making assumptions about what's wrong with the team or what the team needs to do. Just taking at face value what the sponsor tells you needs to be done with this team. That would be, I think, the classic mistake. And the second mistake after that is to take on a poison chalice. If you've got a team which is quite clearly not fixable, without significant changes in the team personnel, then you should not take it on. I mean, a practical example: a team which has an incompetent leader, where it's quite clear that that leader is sort of dug in, and is not no desire to listen to change or listen to anything, and no desire to change. In those circumstances, unless there is a commitment from the team as a whole to bring about change, which may mean in some cases people have to face up to harsh realities, then it isn't going to work, and the team coach is just setting themselves up for failure.
Lovely, thank you. So some interesting insights there, David. So not taking on the projects around the poison chalice, and not making those assumptions from our sponsors. So really listening there. So lovely. Thank you for that question as well. Another question here from Hugo. What measures of success might you use?
Well, I think you can actually go with some, much as you might not like me saying this, David, with some quantitative measures here, because actually if you're seeking to support the team to improve their performance, there are probably some key performance indicators that can be increased, developed, enlarged, whatever, by the team coach working with the individual. But I think there are a lot of intangible benefits in terms of relationships within the team, with the leader and the team, that can also be measured in a more qualitative mode. And I think the building up of trust and honesty and transparency of what's going on, and actually individuals who are comfortable in working more on the team objective or goals or whatever it might be, rather than just pushing their own priorities first for their own team, to me are some of the areas that you can look at in terms of measuring whether it's been successful or not as an intervention.
Yes, the straightforward just did this team sell more, for example, that's a helpful measure, but it doesn't necessarily relate. It could be related to all sorts of things. One of the things that we often measure is how much learning takes place in a team. So is this team actually better equipped to deal with the challenges that can be expected over the next 12 months? And so the qualitative measures are often much more important than the quantitative ones, as Liz says.
Lovely, thank you, David.
You might also want to measure how fast the team, a new team, gets up and running, gets motoring. So when does it go through the forming, storming, norming to performing?
Thank you. And it seems to me that the word trust has come up from both of your responses quite a lot, which leads us nicely into a next question from Daniela. How to set up a relationship of trust between the coach and the team from the beginning? Any advice?
That's something that I think a skilled coach does anyway. That a skilled coach just builds up trust by listening to people and respecting them. And sometimes it's important to start by making sure that your credentials are understood, because people will tend to trust somebody whose credentials they feel are appropriate. But essentially it's the quality of that first conversation that you have. When you're really trying to understand the team, and what may often happen is that you may have an interview with every member of the team beforehand. It's quite frequently that's the case, so that you get an understanding of their perspective of the dynamics of the team, and how you handled that, and the gentle feedback that you give them from that. And it's, just making that conversation one which becomes a learning conversation for them, but in a very subtle way. And one in which they feel that they can open up to you. Because if they open up to you in that one-to-one conversation, they're much more likely to open up to you in the group conversation.
I'll completely agree with everything you're saying there, David. I think it's just that establishment of rapport at the beginning as in one-to-one coaching and getting it right, and it's worthwhile building that individually before you go into the group setting.
What's important, however, is that you don't you don't go native, that they don't actually feel you are a member of their team, because then you lose your objectivity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Some lovely tips and hints there. Thank you. And I think we've maybe got time for a couple more questions. One here from Chris. Is it the role of the team coach to make notes and send around actions after sessions, or is this better done within the team? What are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, absolutely the responsibility of the team.
Yeah.
If the team coach is making notes, they are not attending to what's going on in the team. In fact, we would say this is true of all coaching. I know some of the coaching textbooks say you should take copious notes. But all of the evidence that we have from our research, our recent research, tells us exactly the opposite. That what you should do if you're doing one-to-one coaching is basically not take any notes at all, except one-word notes. Or, just because when you're doing that, you are not listening to the client. Mm-hmm. And then at key points, you ask, what would you like to capture from what we've just been saying? And so what you're doing by that is actually capturing what's important in their mind, not what's important in your mind. Although, of course, you can always reflect back to them and say, I would have thought that, or the ways in which you can reflect it back just to make sure that the things that you thought were important, they have taken into account. But the team itself should be responsible for capturing what's important, and you can help them put shape to that. But essentially, if they capture it, they own it, they do something with it. You take all the notes, you're taking the responsibility away from them, and you're also imposing your assumptions.
Thank you. Thank you both there. And one final question before we close today. What do you do if you realise one or more of the team would benefit from one-to-one coaching?
Or I think you would have a quiet word with them, or their boss, if you think that that's appropriate, and recommend that should take place. And it could be, that the coaching is by their boss, but it might be from somebody from outside, probably most likely from somebody outside. But you just raise the issue. And indeed, one of the things that we often see is that you can actually help the whole team to put together a sort of want list, things I might like to be coached about, and who I might like to do I want to be coached by a colleague, or would I prefer to be coached on this by somebody outside the team? And it's as part of building the team coaching culture, having experience of coaching in these multiple ways is really helpful in just helping people build the habit of co-coaching.
And I think, David, just ensuring that you're signposting these people onto coaching elsewhere so that it doesn't look as if the team coach is trying to get more business in themselves with the individuals. I think that's really, really important as well to give it credibility.
Yes, that certainly is one of the things that we find that clients don't react negatively to. If they think the team coach is touting for more one-to-one work, they react very negatively to that.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your thoughts there, David and Liz, from all your many years of experience of team coaching. It's been a fantastic webinar. And as some of you may know, we're in the process of co-designing what we hope will be a really exciting new workshop for those wanting to be a team coach. So please don't forget to complete the end of webinar survey, which will pop up just as soon as you exit from the webinar. So many thanks for David and Liz for today's really insightful webinar. I hope you feel it's been really interesting both on the theoretical side and the research, but also from their practical tips and hints there. Thank you. And I've just flashed up on screen as well a reminder of some of our forthcoming webinars as well, so feel free to register for those at tmsdiwebinars.com. And obviously staying in touch, all the support that's available for you as a network member, so feel free to call myself and the rest of the team here if you do have any ongoing questions as well. But a big thank you to David and Liz, and I hope you've really enjoyed today's webinars. So thank you, David, thank you, Liz, and we'll close today's webinar now. Thank you.
Thank you.